happens. And I'm guessing the discussion that happens is more of an interview-based discussion where you ask questions and respond back to you?
Well, to be honest, everybody is pressed for time, so we send the questionnaire to them and have them fill it out. Mm-hmm. They send it back to us, and then that's how it's supposed to work. But there's always a few people who you have to chase them down. You have to hold it.
Nuances, agreed,
yeah, you got to hold their hand, and I got to set a meeting with them and do it with them, question by question.
So one last question, so I pass it on to the other folks as well. Don't want to take most of the time asking questions. But post your review when you identify gaps.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take it up to the next level to ensure the materiality of the gap and how the gap needs to be treated?
Well, we have to rate the risk of the gap, and that's a subjective process. But basically, once we have the risk determined, and it's usually a collaborative effort between myself, my manager, the people who own the app. Once we're all in agreement what the risk is, for example, we might say, hey, this is a high risk, but the app owner's going to say, no, it's medium, and these are the reasons why. Or maybe they're going to give us some compensating controls that were not on the questionnaire, that we were not aware of, that does indeed mitigate the risk. Or sometimes, they might be BSing us and saying, no, it's lower, and they don't really have anything to back it up. So once we really officially get the risk honed in, then we can focus in, well, what are we going to do? Now, everywhere I've been at, everyone's pressed for money. So if the recommendation is going to be something that costs money, it's a good chance it's not going to happen. So the first thing that we usually try to do is to ask the app owners, okay, do you have any compensating controls, or can we create a compensating control based on whatever gap we find? Sometimes in the real world, there are no controls to mitigate the gaps, and they just have to live with it and, certify that they're willing to live with the gap. And if anything happens as a result, then they're willing to take the heat for it. I've seen that in the real world a lot of times too. Sometimes there are no compensating controls. Sometimes, you can have controls, but it's going to cost too much money to implement them. So management decides, hey, we're going to live with this risk. And, we just make sure we document that. And so if anything does happen down the line, we have it in writing that they decided to, live with the risk or the gap that was discovered as a result of the application assessment.
No, that's good. Very good, Rich. As I think of more.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on what you had just said there, Chip.
Sure.
Then we get a lot of that, what you just described there too, where the business may, want to accept, it's within the risk tolerance of the company. They may want to accept that. Have you been involved with the conversations with attempting to articulate the risk, to the business?
Oh yeah,
make a decision on that.
That's everywhere I'm at. We have to articulate the risk because this is my opinion. It's in their nature to whatever we say to them, they're going to try to minimize it. So we have to have, facts and documentation to back up whatever it is that we're saying, specifically speaking about the risk. Okay, for example, I'm in a lot of discussions where, they want to minimize the gap. They want to say, no, it's low risk, but we know it's high. So we have to prove that it's high, and by proving that, you have to articulate to people who are kind of angry at you because you're telling them something that they don't want to hear. So it's through the articulation and the backup documentation that we're showing them and, results of the assessment. Hey, we understand you think it's low, but these are the reasons why we think it's high. And through articulation, that's how you reach some type of consensus with them.
Right. So, have you ever run into the situation? I understand, the tech people generally understand the risk because they're, technical in nature. Trying to explain, perhaps a complex technical situation, to a business person is generally more challenging. Have you ever run into where, you're trying to explain the risk of a technical issue to a business person and they're just not getting it? And
right.
What did you do in that situation?
All the time, and that's where when it gets to that situation, that's when I convert everything I'm saying into layman's terms. whatever I'm trying to convey, I put it in layman's terms, and that way they always get it. If I start using a lot of auditing mumbo jumbo, it might go over their heads, but I bring it down to the ground level, as they say. They always get it. So it depends on how much knowledge the other person has regarding the auditing process or the risk assessment process. So a lot of them don't care about risk assessments. They think we're in a way, we're just a necessary evil. That's the attitude that we have to deal with. So we have to get through that attitude and get the job done.
No, that's great. Appreciate your feedback there.
Yeah. Now,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Birgit. You want to fire away?
And let me just add, I remember when the assessments that I was involved with Kieran, I was getting a lot of work done in the short amount of time I was there. And I found that some of the people that like control owners and app owners and that sort of thing, it's just like any place else. Some people respond right away. Some people you have to chase them down. And it's like that here. It's like that everywhere. So I've dealt with that too, especially when you have deadlines and you've emailed this guy 5 times, he's not returning your emails, you've pinged him 10 times, he responds sometimes to your pings, sometimes he ignores them. You always get those type of people. Then you got to call them on the phone, they don't return your voicemails. Eventually you're going to have to escalate on some people, and that's just, the way it is. It is what it is,
Nope, agreed.
So, Jeff, are you familiar with the TD template? Did you use that, last fall when you worked for TD Bank?
Which template are you referring to?
To the control design, also control gap assessment?
To be honest, there were a couple templates that I used, but I don't recall them right now.
It was an Excel spreadsheet where there was, some enterprise controls filled out already, and then we use our comments in there. Okay, and so, Jeff, are you your own consultant, or are you employed by a consulting company?
Well, yes and yes. I'm my own consultant that I have my resume on online job websites. Either clients contact me directly or agencies, headhunters contact me to work for one of their clients. That's how it usually works.
Okay, so you're not employed by another one that places you different places. You are directly employed by the company that you consult with.
Do you mean right now, like with MUFG?
Yeah, no, I can see when I look at the resume, all your positions are consulting positions within the last many years, last 10 years, right?
No, there's a couple perm jobs in there.
Okay.
A question, Shep, for you. Under the Mitsubishi Cyber Risk Project Manager role, you have a bullet point that says regularly assess the adequacy and effectiveness of IT controls, security policies, and remediation activities. Could you talk a little bit more about how you would check the effectiveness of the controls and what approach you would take?
Sure. Based on the result of limited testing, we see what the test results are. If the test results are kosher and everything passed, then we might deem that the controls are effective. If we're looking at testing documentation and something looks fishy or something just doesn't feel or seem right, then we'll conduct additional testing to give us confidence that, hey, what we're seeing is legit or what we're seeing is bogus. I'm sorry, did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Okay.
Now, another follow-up question on that is, what was your testing methodology, and who actually would help create the test plans?
Well, creating test plans, usually here, my role, I'm not involved with that, but I've done it 1,000 times when I was in internal audit. Here, the test plans are already created. We're just basically overlooking the results of the testing. On this role, I'm not creating test plans like, I would have done in my